Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a great day and that you're, enjoying your time at home and that you're ready to get back next week whenever we come together. But today we're going to finish up chapter 2 in our research methods section, while talking about correlations. So now, whether psychologists conduct naturalistic observations, case studies, surveys, or experiments, their investigations usually generate a large amount of data. Now, statistical analyses are the methods most often used to summarize and analyze that data. So, now, after observations are made, they must be analyzed. Describing behavior is the first step towards predicting it, and correlations measure the relationship between two things appearing together and thus how well either predicts the other. So a correlation, the thing you need to remember is that the stronger the correlation between two things, the more closely those two things are related. So for an example, there is a strong correlation between height and ability to reach items that are located at the top shelf. It's like, so other things you look for, it's like, what is the relationship between grades earned by students and extracurricular involvement? Turns out it's usually a little bit higher. Okay. So another example is that high aptitude test scores correlate with high school success. Thus, high scores can predict school success. Correlations can link the two and use one to predict the other. Like Max, let's say there's a kid named Max, and he has a high aptitude score. So he'll probably be successful in high school, but correlation can't explain why or how. We can make guesses, hypothesize, but correlation doesn't scientifically explain the causes of the relationship. Okay? So a positive correlation is one, whereas one goes up, so does the other. And a negative correlation is that as one goes down, the other goes up, the other goes down. So what would the correlation be between people who feel the need to achieve in job and career success? In fact, there is a positive correlation between achievers and salaries. So people who strive to achieve typically have higher salaries. So again, that's a positive correlation. Now, for a negative correlation, there's a negative correlation between stress and health. As one goes up, the other goes down. And as one goes up, the opposite is true for the other. As the amount of stress on people increases, their immune systems become less capable of fighting off illness, thus greater stress equals poorer health. Okay? So, if you're wanting to talk about the different correlations, so the more TV is on in the homes of young children, the less time they spend reading. Now, that would be a negative correlation. The more sexual content students or teens see on TV, the more likely they are to have sex. So remember, those are both going up. That would be positive. The longer children are breastfed, the greater their later academic achievement. That would also be a positive. And the more income rose among a sample of poor families, the fewer psychological problems or psychiatric symptoms their children experienced. That would be a negative. Now, correlations are measured in terms of a correlation coefficient. A correlation coefficient, symbolized by R, tells us the strength of the relationship as measured by either a -1 to a +1. The plus of a number tells us it's a positive number. The negative number tells us it's a negative correlation. So again, that example of the high aptitude test scores, okay? Never mind. Okay, so again, you use these numbers to correlate the two and just mathematically show the correlation. Normally to do this, you would put them on a scatter plot, which this is probably a little bit of algebra 1 for you, but a scatter plot in both of these examples. So on the left, perfect positive correlation. It'd be a pure straight line going up. Negative correlation would be a straight line going down. No relationship means that they're just kind of all over the map. Okay? So those are the two variables. Now, they're probably, very rarely will you ever have the straight lines. They're probably more just in a general direction. So just something to consider. So if you were to take so you typically will use statistics to kind of help you determine correlations. They can help you see what you may miss just based on observation. So you're taking actual measurements. So like in this example here, it's asking, are tall men more or less easygoing? You collect the scores, men's heights and their temperaments. Temperaments measure from 0 to 100, easygoing to explosive, right? Then you put them all on a scatter plot. So according to this scatter plot, what is the relationship between height and temperament? And if you were to look at it and say the taller the men, the higher their temperament, meaning that the taller they are, the less likely they are to be explosive. Now, again, it's not saying that height equals like a calm demeanor. It's just saying that you're more likely to be for that. So according to this scatter plot, is this a positive or negative correlation? And it's a positive. But you also have to ask yourself, is it a strong correlation? Like you can see that there's a trend, but are all the like numbers like really tightly packed together? No. So that means it's not a strong correlation. In fact, it's a moderate positive correlation of positive 0.63. Now, one thing you need to remember is that correlation does not imply causation. So just because things work out together does not mean that that's the cause. Like being, like using the tall man example. Like a tall person does not necessarily have to be a calmer person, or being tall does not like make you calmer. It just means you're more likely to be. It's just a correlation. It's just two things that seem related or probably are related, but they're not causing each other. Okay? So there was like an example here. So they did a study where small appliances, people who own them in Taiwan, like as they used them more, so did their use of birth control. They called this a direct correlation. Now, it's not saying that if you bought a toaster, you were more like you were going to start using birth control. It's just saying that you were more likely to. So what this birth control study was an example of a correlational study. A correlational study measures two or more variables and uses statistical methods to determine how related or correlated the variables are. The purpose of a correlation study is to predict behavior. So as I said, in this study, as small appliance ownership increased, so did use of birth control. This is known as a direct correlation. When an increase in one variable is related to an increase in another variable, then we say that there is a direct correlation between the two variables. When the number of appliances in the house was low, the use of birth control was low. And when the number of appliances in the house was high, the use of birth control was high. So what's going on here in our study of birth control use in Taiwan? Now, like there are three possible cause-effect relationships. People who are low in self-esteem are more likely to report depression than those who are high in self-esteem. So one possible, or rather, family income contributes. That's a different example. I was just saying family income contributes to both level of small appliance ownership and education, which is knowledge of birth control. So these are things that may work together. Okay, so then you also have low self-esteem and depression, that example I was just giving. So one possible explanation of the negative correlation is that bad self-image causes depressed feeling. But as the diagram shows, other cause and effects are possible. Okay? So we have some other examples. So the number of icicles is positively correlated with the number of people wearing coats. Icicles do not cause the coat wearing, but the coat wearing doesn't cause icicles. Both are caused by the third variable, which is freezing temperatures. And there's also heroin use and marijuana use are positively correlated, but one cannot assume causation. Milk use and heroin use are also positively correlated, i.e. most heroin users are...
High School, please stand and join me in the pledge.
Okay, y'all have a good day, everybody.